easier it is to sell souls.
There is a new price on freedom, so buy into it while supplies last. Changes need to be made. No more curbside baggage. 7 p.m. curfew. Racial profiling will continue with less bitching. We've unified over who to kill, so until I find more relevant scripture to quote, remember, our God is bigger, stronger, smarter, and much wealthier. So wave those flags with pride, especially the white part.
We're selling addictive 24-hour candlelight vigils in TVs. Freedom will be defended at the cost of civil liberties. The viewers are glued to television screens, stuck, cause lots of things seem too sick. I use opportunities to pluck heartstrings for theme music. I show you which culture to pump your...
Hey, welcome to The Grift. I'm Rev and
Gonzo.
And it is almost the last day of our Crash Out month. Or mine, anyways.
Everyone's really.
All right.
Everyone's really.
Cool.
Yeah.
At least I'm not alone in riding the wave of the shit show and moderately handling it through substances.
What else can you do?
Oh, and casual sex. Anyway, so should we get on to the news?
Yeah, let's start with the news this week. I feel like there was a lot.
Yeah, really?
Was it? There's always a lot anymore. It's
yeah.
It's an ever-flowing stream.
Let's start with a minor piece of like weird, sad housekeeping.
Alrighty.
We got Gene Hackman and his wife and their dog.
One of their dogs. They had 3 dogs. 2 were fine. 1 was found in the kennel. He was found in one bedroom. She was found in another bedroom. No signs of trauma.
Wow.
To anybody. It's probably something like carbon monoxide poisoning.
That's
my assumption. It's my wild speculation. Yesterday we found out that the wrong Buffy cast member died.
Yeah,
at only 39 years old.
So there will not be. She will not be in the Buffy reboot they're doing.
Apparently not.
And we are not going to get a Hoosiers sequel.
I know we've all been waiting for the latter for 35 years now.
Yeah, I have, anyways. I mean, Hoosiers is great, isn't it?
I haven't watched it since like 1990, so I don't remember.
Fair.
I was like 10 or 11.
Speaking of dead, the rule of law, as Andrew Tate and his brother, whatever that dipshit's name is. What is his brother's name?
Tristan, I believe.
Tristan Tate.
Tristan Tate.
Andrew and Tristan Tate.
They have somehow been released from their confinement in Romania and allowed to flee to the United States, Florida specifically, on a private jet.
Owned by?
Who was it owned by?
Donald fucking Trump.
Shocking.
After a massive influence campaign by the U.S. government and like a bunch of Trump's like affluent friends.
Who would have guessed that Donald John Trump would help child sex traffickers flee persecution?
Yeah.
That's not on brand at all.
Oh, my God. All right.
It's not like his best friend did it for 30 years.
Yep. So what else do we have aside from the rapist getting out? Let's see. Oh, March 4th tariffs now on Mexico, Canada, an extra 10% on China.
Yeah.
Over the fentanyl issue. Over fentanyl.
Even though 90% of the fentanyl that comes into the United States illegally, because we do have a huge legal supply.
Right.
We had it at the hospital when I worked there.
It's relatively easy to make in a fucking lab here in the States.
A lot of what's smuggled in are precursors.
Right.
They're then manufactured here. But anything that's illegally smuggled in, like 90% of it comes in through luggage carried by American citizens on airplanes. It's not coming through the Canadian border. It's not coming through the Mexican border.
Right. And the precursors that are imported, most of them are legal.
Yeah.
And so all you have to do is have like the right LLC and a few licenses and you're good to go. And that's hard to track. They're used for other things.
It's easier to get all the things you need to make fentanyl than it is to get all the things you need to make a fertilizer bomb without somebody noticing.
Yeah. So this is stupid. And again, bad for the economy, as always. We got Pentagon saying they're going to remove all transgender troops from service.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We've got the the Republican budget proposal
Oh my God.
coming out of the House,
Yeah. So,
which
now-
they don't say will zero out Medicaid,
but it
there's
proposes cuts, proportional cuts, and that's on their laundry list of
Right.
ways that they have to do it.
and like there's no way to cut the amount of spending they say they want to cut without zeroing out something like Medicaid.
Yeah, so they put a framework of things that they want to cut into it. Like, and this is our wish list. And on the wish list, they've got a dollar amount, like 800 billion or something like that. And then the programs added up like equal like $1 trillion, right?
Yeah.
So you zero out
Basically everything. And just because I know some of you have heard otherwise, there was no proposal in this budget framework for eliminating the tax on tips,
Nope.
eliminating the tax on Social Security, or eliminating the tax on overtime, which is really just a redefinition of overtime to hours per month instead of hours per week.
Yeah. So
Anyway.
it lets your employer make you work like 70 hours one week with no OT.
And then not work you at all the next week.
That sounds fucking criminal to me.
Yeah.
Let's see.
You don't benefit.
Oh my God. Let's see. USAID workers have been pushed out. The agency is like just basically gutted right now.
Right, and the Supreme Court, I believe, refused to issue a stay on the ending of funding, even though they're going to hear the case.
Right.
So they can still like stop all funding. They don't have to fund in the meantime. So until SCOTUS gets around to hearing the case, whenever that may be,
Yeah.
they can just suspend all funding.
Speaking of which, let's see. The lower court decision ordering Trump administration to pay like state grants and funding has just been halted by John Roberts himself. He wrote that opinion.
Of course he did.
Yep. So he's just like, nah, let it burn for now. We'll hear the case, but a month from now, 6 months from now, whenever
When we
hear
feel like it.
it. Yep.
We could expedite it and do it like next week.
Uh-huh.
We could.
Could do it.
We won't.
Nope.
There's no sense of urgency here.
Interesting one. So Trump administration wants to yank Chevron's license.
Okay.
And now, you know what's funny about that?
What's funny about that?
Well, so obviously Chevron is, Venezuelan, right?
Yes.
It's owned by Venezuela. But there's like an export pact and like rules governing Chevron and like a whole bunch of like quasi sanctions against people. So like it makes like Chevron more constrained as an oil company.
Okay.
And it makes them more constrained as far as like doing business outside of the U.S. Venezuela is looking at this almost as kind of a win because even though it will hurt them in the U.S. market, right? They are looking at it and it frees them up to do a bunch more fucking trade around the world, selling their oil and exporting it. So it actually opens up more export opportunities to countries that pay more for their oil without, bad econ. Always bad econ. What are they going to do? Like all those Chevron fucking gas stations and fucking refineries around the country. Like it's either like forced nationalization or these guys don't seem to think through the next couple steps.
the way Americans talk about oil production, I think many Americans genuinely believe we have a nationalized, government-owned oil industry.
Yeah, it's weird.
We don't. We never have.
No, the only thing that the government, for the most part, owns, and it's not all of it. It's just a large percentage of the actual oil reserves, right? And it's because most of it is either on federal lands or way the hell under the earth in giant pockets that like meet a bunch of people's lands. So they didn't distribute the fucking full mineral rights to everybody above. They give them checks and shit, right? But they can't own all the oil down below them because they're not fucking drinking the milkshake, right? Like, fucking There Will Be Blood. And the biggest pockets of it now are off of our coasts, right? And so deep water drilling in U.S. territorial waters can't belong to the guy that owns a fucking piece of the beach, right? So they own that, but they license it out cheap. Like oil companies do not pay market rate for that oil. Like,
No.
we are charging way below the normal rate to these oil companies for their licenses and for the rights to extract this oil. And we have been for decades.
And they get to keep the profit.
Yep. And we're already at peak refining capacity. We can't. This whole drill, baby, drill nonsense is silly because we can't refine it faster.
We could stockpile it, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And our strategic oil reserves are already doing fine. Biden pulled an impressive maneuver and actually like sold a bunch high and replenished the stockpile low.
Right.
And I was like $300 billion in profit.
Yep. And brought down the price of gasoline because he timed his trades so well that they timed
and like forced the global market. Like we flooded the global market so much all at once, it actually drove the price down.
Yep.
And then we bought it back cheaper.
Exactly. So every time the price was spiking up, he was like, here you go. And it's weird because it's like this 2015 law that was passed requiring the president that every time the debt or debt ceiling, the exact mechanism I can't quite remember, but when that happened, it required the government to sell off a portion of the reserve because we've kept it very high for a long time and we don't actually need it that high, right? No. So they were like, okay, well, we'll reduce the amount we need it at, but what we'll do is we'll make some money on that. However, since then, Obama and Trump had just sold it at market rate at that time, whatever that rate was.
So there was no strategy behind the sale.
Exactly. And Biden looked at that and said, we
can make us some money.
We can make some money. Or one of his advisors did, an economic advisor or whatever. But
and he was smart enough to listen to them.
Yes. And it was brilliant. Like, it actually wound up saving us all money.
Whoever idea that was, genius plan.
Exactly.
Brilliant, brilliant strategy.
Yeah.
And they didn't talk about it or promote it, so no one knew outside of those of us who just happened to find this shit out because we're weird and we hyper obsess on these things.
Yeah.
But like that was if Trump had pulled off the same sort of maneuver, he would have been holding rallies to talk about how much money he made for the government.
Oh, absolutely.
With his brilliant strategy. And he'd have gotten credit for it.
You're right.
He would have been hailed as a genius for it.
But no, that's not the world we live in anymore.
Well, the Democrats they're never willing to fucking announce their wins. Yeah. They fucking think the policy speaks for itself somehow, when that's never been the case.
Yeah. Speaking of policies that speak for themselves, that fucking video.
Yeah.
That God King Trump Gaza nonsense with him fucking
that. The more I think about it, the more I think that might be the most irresponsible thing I've seen from a president in my lifetime.
And absolutely deranged. It was like
totally unhinged, like insane.
It was like
obscene.
It was like the 14-year-old son of a fucking Saudi prince made it. Yeah, that's what it looked like, right? Like it was a meme, and it was bad AI generated,
terrible,
and it was all gold and gaudiness and beaches and
giant statues of Trump and bearded belly dancers.
Yeah,
which was an interesting choice for this administration.
It was.
I don't know if they noticed that or if he's just like, it's fine. They're hot. Hey, you know what? Hey, there's no one saying a bearded belly dancer can't be hot.
To each their own, I guess.
I just didn't expect it from Donald John Trump.
Yeah. Whew. All right.
But here we are.
Yep.
I never needed to see even an AI image of a shirtless Benjamin Netanyahu sunbathing next to Donald Trump, though. But I have now, and I can never unsee it. That's with me till I die.
Oh, God. Oh, measles.
Yeah. Measles.
Unvaccinated child in Texas has died, and that's the first fatality. But
the first fatality in the cabinet meeting, RFK said that 2 have died.
Okay, so
in this measles outbreak.
So he's either just wrong or he slipped some shit that they didn't want us to know yet.
Yeah.
All right.
It might have been one of those things where it's like the family, if it was a child, the family might not have wanted the news to be public yet.
Right.
And they might have been withholding for that reason. There's all kinds of reasons why the numbers might be different, but he said 2. The press is only saying it's officially only 1.
Right.
And we were speaking of. I was talking to you about this right before we started filming. The FDA every year they have a big meeting to determine what strains of influenza are going to be in the subsequent year's flu vaccine, because at this point we don't have a general flu vaccine that covers all possible strains.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We just don't have it. So every year they have a big meeting and they look at the data and look at prevalence and incidence rates and determine what strains should be in next year's flu vaccine. They have canceled that meeting with no explanation as to why or whether it will be rescheduled, and if it is to be rescheduled, when it might be rescheduled for. So there's a distinct possibility that next fall there will not be an influenza vaccine.
That'd be amazing, right? It'd be like, what, 400,000 elderly people dead, a few thousand kids?
Probably.
Right, okay.
I mean,
cool.
I have...
not a big deal.
I have been getting my flu... I had to get the flu vaccine when I worked at the hospital.
Right.
And it just became habit for me at that point. Mm-hmm. Not that I haven't had the flu since I was like a toddler.
Nice.
But it did almost kill me then.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
I ended up hospitalized for like 4 weeks.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Because it turned into pneumonia.
And it can do that with children. Especially if the kid has like any other like autoimmune disorders, any other diseases, and again, the elderly, like we already lose between 30,000 and 100,000 people a year to the flu.
Speaking of the elderly, back to those Medicaid cuts that are coming.
Oh boy,
eliminating Medicaid would necessarily mean that 25% of all of the long-term senior care facilities in the country would just shut down.
Jesus Christ.
Closed. Wow. So if you have a parent or grandparent who is living in any kind of assisted living facility, they might be living with you by this time next year if they're still alive.
Well, that'll be fun.
Yeah, so I hope you enjoy the financial burden of an extra person in your house who needs long-term medical care. Now, the funny thing is, like, you know what Harris's plan for Medicaid was?
To expand it.
To expand it and have it cover all home health care.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Oh, boy.
Every senior's home health care would have just been covered under Medicaid.
We could have, should have, would have.
I
actually wanted to circle back to that measles thing, though. I had a story, and I didn't want to lose my train of thought from that too much. I was in this conversation with a nurse friend of mine over social media. And she tells a story because she's been a nurse for fucking 20-some odd years, right? And about 8-10 years ago, you remember when there was that wave of measles going through the country? A while back?
Yeah.
Now, so they get this patient in. It's got weird spots all over. Now, the doctors have no idea what the hell it is. She was like, I think I know what it is, and had to go around the hospital looking for a doctor that was over 60, right?
Right.
And so she finds a doctor that's like 62 years old, and he comes down and he diagnoses it, and he is floored. And it took him a minute because he
hasn't seen it.
And then he looks at her and said, I didn't think I would ever see another case of this in my life. Like, that's insane. That's how we were so close to eradicating this shit.
As of the year 2000, it was officially declared eradicated in the United States because there had not been a single suspected case in the previous 12 months anywhere in the United States. And we have backslid that far in the last 2.5 decades.
Yeah, that's
25 years. We are worse off now than we were in the year 2000. I have thoughts about the year 2000.
Right, same.
And I think I know how we got here.
And so, God. You know what floors me about the GOP budget proposal is they pretend to be fiscal conservatives all the time.
Yes, because they're liars.
Right. And the left, for the most part, doesn't pretend, right? Like, most Democrats, progressives, and anybody left of that, they don't pretend that they deeply care about the debt or deficit. Right? Like, deficits do kind of sort of matter. Like,
right. You don't want them to get completely out of control.
Right.
But deficit spending is going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, countries are going to carry a certain amount of debt.
In the field of economics, there's a lot of arguing over MMT, modern monetary theory, right? And now the biggest chunks of that argument are actually over the political arguments within it, not its core, like, foundational principles, right? Like the basics of the mechanisms. Those most post-Keynesians and like post-neoclassical school economists and your rank and file econ folks have kind of at least begrudgingly accepted, like such as that debt and deficits don't truly matter as long as the productive capacity and the power to tax of the state is sufficient to keep that stable. Right. And from running away. So as long as there's enough production output, GDP, and growth coming from your spending, right?
Yeah, right.
You're spending, you know, you can go into debt and it won't hurt you. It won't kill you for that much. Like, you know, and that the government prints money and that's what creates economies. Like, you know, these are these.
You don't have an economy without that.
Right. And so.
Not a large scale one.
So these are the things that, you know, MMT basically, you know, says. Now, the rest are like political arguments about whether or not like it matters at all or that you could just, you know, fund like a UBI without raising taxes or like cutting, or like cutting out.
I mean, and then that is, like, and the one thing that I love is like, how do we pay for this? There's a real simple answer to how do we pay for this. You raise taxes on people who aren't paying their fair share.
Right.
You just. You know,
and now some things you can still finance through debt.
Yeah.
Like you have to. Sure.
And that's fine up to a point. Like it's about finding the balance.
Right.
And accepting that there is a balance. It's not a zero-sum game.
Republicans pretend that there's a balance and they have to find cuts because debt bad when they're out of power. And as soon as they get into power, every fucking time, they blow up the debt and deficit.
And it's always just tax cuts for the wealthy.
Yeah.
Every time. I mean, occasionally.
And military spending.
Yeah, occasionally it's just a war that we keep off the books. Right. But their budget proposal has the military budget ballooning to $1.3 trillion.
Yeah, what's it at? Like 900 billion right now?
I think it's like 890 billion in that neighborhood.
So yeah, it's just under 9.
So just under 900 billion. Not quite a trillion, but they it's like 5 years out, you're like at $1.3 trillion a year. That's in military spending. And this is at a time when like our global order is falling.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, where is all this money going and what's it for?
That is the other thing. It's like, all right, you guys are shredding the entire strategic global order that our military holds up, right?
Yeah.
Like our main function as a state these days is the stable place to park your money that has a big fucking military.
Yeah.
Like we have stable democratic systems and from government to government, election to election, things go like this, right? Yeah. And they don't like swing high, swing low.
It's a nice steady undulation.
Right. Yeah.
A slight undulation.
So that's like a benefit to global investment, like, and those with money and countries like to park their money and do business with us. Mm-hmm. And then we have this big fucking military to protect them and us and the trade routes around the world. And we are like squashing half of that. And like as far as like half of our global influence, we're just crushing that.
Just destroying it.
Fuck off. We don't care. And domestically, the instability is off the charts. We are just changing and breaking everything all at once.
A lot of it for the sake of breaking it.
Yeah. And it's like just. So what is our value as a state, as a government, as a people, right? When this is all said and done, what point is there to invest in the United States? What point is there to us being a superpower? And that's you don't get to just stay a superpower because you were like
especially when like
ask the USSR.
Yeah, especially when you had a system where you had two superpowers for decades and one of them just stopped existing entirely. Being the lone superpower, like at that point, what does even being a superpower mean? You're just the global hegemony. Right.
And that was a boon. We're kind of going to talk about some of that at the later half. But shredding that doesn't seem to have any value to the American people.
No, if you wanted to, like, over years, wind down our military presence globally.
Sure.
In a strategic way.
Oh yeah, I could get behind that. We
I
got
could
like
get behind
800
that.
bases around the world. Sure.
Like, you could say, do we need this here? Do we need this here? Do we need
Yeah.
this missile defense system in this place?
Right.
There's ways you can strategically dial it back over time.
yeah, like 20% of our bases aren't needed.
Yeah,
Right?
so there's no shock to the
Even
system.
domestically. Like,
Yeah. Just scrapping everything all at once only breeds chaos.
yeah. And
And chaos isn't good for anybody.
no. And the fact that we're doing this on like the diplomatic level too, like just burning every relationship we've ever built seems
And it's
suicidal.
It's funny because we're going back to 2000.
Uh-huh.
I have watched Republicans destroy our global fuck, I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Influence?
Not influence. It doesn't matter. I've watched the Republicans, starting with George W. Bush, just like
Reputation?
reputation.
Okay,
That's it.
I
They
get where you're
destroy
going.
our reputation.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the Democrat comes in and restores our reputation.
Right.
And then the next Republican fucks it up again. And another Democrat. I don't know that we can rebuild our reputation after this one.
Not without some serious legal reforms. Like
There are things that I think we probably need to do that I don't know that we are constitutionally able to do.
yeah, and I think some of them have a lot to do with the framing of the Constitution.
Yeah,
and how the systems of checks and balances are not well enshrined.
We have reached to the point where we probably need to treat the modern Republican Party the way the Germans treat the National Socialist Party of the 1930s and 40s now.
Yeah, probably.
Like, it's, as an institution, it probably, the best thing we could do would be just outright ban it, but we can't do that. That's not an option for us.
Not yet.
Not without some serious constitutional reforms.
Yeah.
But how do you reform the Constitution in a situation when you're this polarized?
Well, I think Abe Lincoln had some ideas.
Yeah?
Uh-huh. I think that, personally, this is why I think Joe Biden was a fucking coward. I would have defied the courts on the 14th Amendment insurrection bullshit. I would have, from the bully pulpit, as president of the United States, called Donald Trump an insurrectionist and the GOP insurrectionists. And
Yeah.
I would have made sure that they were not seated in Congress.
Yeah,
Not a
all of
member
these
them.
people.
They should not, after January 6th, every single Republican that didn't condemn it immediately.
There are 25 or 30 Republicans who were in the House of Representatives on that day who should never be allowed to hold federal office.
Correct.
Again.
And 14th Amendment is clear.
It's very clear.
Abraham
it's
Lincoln.
unambiguous. It's one of our more unambiguous.
And the case law and the situation around what Abraham Lincoln did with the fucking Democrats during the Civil War, fucking easy, right?
Yeah.
Kick them out, you're done. You're not in this fucking Congress.
Yeah.
And now the Constitution was amended afterwards to make sure that was the law of the land.
Yeah.
I'd have called them all insurrectionists. I would have tossed them. When the courts were like, oh, I don't think so, I'd have been like, go fuck yourselves, they are. And I would have refused to allow them seats. Then I would have amended the Constitution to make sure that agencies are independent and that checks and balances exist, right? And that the fucking court had to uphold things like the Emoluments Clause, right?
Right.
Like, I would have amended the shit out of the Constitution to weaken the powers of the executive office a little bit, empower the legislature a little bit, right? And weaken the court's ability to ignore the Constitution.
Yeah, and it's
Those
also
three things,
you also create a situation
easily.
where it's really hard for someone to look at you and say that you're being a tyrant when you're saying, I should constitutionally have less power than I have.
Correct.
My power should be taken away is not the sort of thing a tyrannical dictator says.
Yes. Like, would it have been like arguably authoritarian of a move of him? Sure, right?
And
but he would have been utilizing the authority that he had.
He should have
forcing the issue.
He should have coupled that early on with him saying, I am a one-term president. I
Yeah.
am like February of 2021, he should have been like, I am not running for re-election. I'm doing this instead.
Right. And just
and I will leave the country on a more sound footing going forward.
Yep.
But I'm not going to be president for it. I'm doing this and then I'm done.
30 House members out, fucking 20, 30 senators out, right? And you fucks do not ever get to hold fucking office again. And while you're out, we have this supermajority. We are going to amend the Constitution right now to do X, Y, and Z. And it's going to get fucking done. And then maybe, I don't know, like governors who were like, we think January 6th was a hoax. Arrest that fucker too. Insurrectionist. Boom. Done. Now your state ratifies the new Constitution. You don't like it? Fuck off. Right? And I may sound like an authoritarian asshole, but we had this experiment before. We know that it was legal then.
Right.
Nothing has changed since. And the only reason it wasn't done further was Jefferson fucking... not Jefferson Davis.
Andrew Johnson.
Andrew Johnson.
Which I still... God damn. That was a decision, Abe.
Yeah. Oh, God.
That was a fucking decision.
Yeah, like... I mean...
Because it hadn't even been particularly long that the presidents had been choosing their running mates.
Right.
Like, I don't remember when that change happened.
Yeah.
It was just runner-up got to be vice president.
Yep. And he picked, I mean, like, I get it. He picked his biggest rival, whatever, but...
Because at one point, I just assumed that's what happened. And then I looked, I was like, oh, no, he picked him.
Ooh, yeah. He was doing that whole team of rivals thing, which was stupid.
And it just goes to show that you cannot trust a Confederate ever under any circumstances.
Yep. Or anybody who says nice things about the Confederacy ever.
No.
Ever. So, yeah. There's that. What else have we got in the news? I know there's some crazy shit.
There's some crazy ass shit. We had our first, we mentioned it briefly in passing. We had our first full cabinet meeting.
Oh, God, yeah.
That was basically the Elon Musk show.
It went so off the rails.
It went so off the rails. And, like, he couldn't answer simple questions from the press.
He's not a bright person.
He's not a bright person.
I'm sick of these people pretending he is.
I love drugs. I want to preface this. I think drugs can be a valuable tool.
I have not slept for a reason.
That man does far too many drugs far too often.
Yep.
He has turned his brain into soup, and it was not particularly congealed to begin with.
Yeah. It's like, look, moderation is great.
As long as your chemical habits are not getting in the way of your daily life, your ability to like go to your job and maintain your friendships and relationships, you don't have a problem.
You're right, exactly. Oh, speaking of which, actually, funny. So, one of the reasons that I have the main reason I haven't slept is because I was doing our work on a micro scale.
Okay.
So, you remember our young acquaintance friend. He was more my friend, but an acquaintance that you knew.
Yeah. And I became very disillusioned with him.
Right.
And it was against my will.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be.
I know. He was a nice...
I didn't want to be. Like, he could be incredibly funny, too. He's quick wit.
Yep. But lots and lots and lots of issues. And he started sliding down the alt-right rabbit hole and, like, straight up Nazi shit.
Yeah, full blown.
And
more so some of his friends, but his friends were part of the problem.
Right. And he went from like Authcom, authoritarian communist ideas to authoritarian right ideas.
Right.
And now he and I've run into him because of a mutual friend, and I started socializing with him again a little bit. Like, I'm not like fucking inviting him out to the bar or anything.
Right, but he shows up sometimes.
But he shows up sometimes in places. And so I stopped at a bar I knew he's usually at, and I was like, hey, I don't see you here. You good? He's like, yeah, I'm just trying to save money. I'm like, all right, cool. But then he decides he's going to pop up anyways. Now, I was just planning to stop for a drink. And because it's like right by my house. But he shows up, and we start having a conversation. It was a great conversation. And you know how that goes. And now this kid, he has moderated a bit. He's toned down, right? And he's a very smart young man. I say young man, but he's fucking almost 30 now, right? You know,
God, is he really?
Yeah, they all are, you know? We've just known him that long.
Yeah, I mean...
we were in our 30s when we met them.
Yeah, I mean, there are people I met who were like... They were 18 when I met them, and they're 28 now, and I'm like, oh...
Yeah, exactly.
Shit.
Right?
How did they get older and I didn't?
I don't know,
When did
man.
that happen? That's fucking weird.
I mean... I've aged a little bit, but not much.
I feel younger now than I did in 2015.
Some ways I do. Like it varies by the day, but yeah, I often feel younger. It's because I'm not trying to be as like fucking horseshit responsible, fucking hold it all together all the goddamn times I used to be.
Yeah, I got fired from my last job.
Yeah, fair. Yeah,
and that was good.
Fair.
It was a good thing. It was a healthy thing.
Yeah. So, but I'm having my little crash out month, and so one drink turned into two and turned into three, and then we had a shot, and then so I wasn't drunk, but I had a little buzz, and next thing you know, we're fucking blow, right, and still awake. But what we were doing was we were talking about like in very specific like issues, like policies, right, and like it was a really productive conversation because like obviously like he thinks that like Trump's an idiot, be like JD Vance, right, like
which is a thing.
I mean, it makes sense though because he thinks Vance is more intelligent and he has read some of the same people Vance has read, right? Okay. So that we've talked about, right? But we're having this conversation and I get him turned around in a couple ideas because, yeah, he's fucking almost like a fucking soft, not quite racist Strasserite, and so it's just about nudging him back. So I spent like 4 or 5 hours just like talking to this kid, like nudging him back in the right
slightly
direction.
Pushing.
And, like, that's good work, right? Yeah. But so yeah, you can still be on substances and do good work.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean It really is just if it's not impacting your day-to-day functioning and life. Yeah. And you're not putting yourself at physical risk.
Right. Yeah, enjoy yourself.
Do it. Have a good time. Enjoy yourself. You sometimes need a little bit of chemically aided disassociation.
Yep. Moderation. Friends,
yeah. Don't
do drugs or drink alone.
And maybe there are some specific drugs you want to avoid.
Yeah.
Meth probably not the best idea.
Not the best idea. Heroin you got to be real careful with.
Real careful.
Most opioids,
most opioids. Really careful. They will get on top of you real fast in a way you don't expect. If there's
crack can be like a little cocaine every once in a while.
If there's anything that has ever been referred to as a zombie drug,
avoid that.
Crocodile, trank, your weird street cocktails that people who have decided that they have bottomed out in addiction and that's just going to be their last like year or two of life. Yeah, avoid those drugs. In general,
but. If you're experimental,
right? But like,
do not be me.
Yeah,
whatever you do,
you want to be able to have like a happy, healthy life. You don't want to be strung out on Kensington Avenue.
Yeah, I like to stare into the void for a few seconds, minutes, days, weeks. Yeah, and then bounce back to reality.
I personally stick almost exclusively to hallucinogens.
I mean, yeah, mushrooms and weed are my main go-tos.
I think I might be allergic
to weed.
THC. Yeah. More than a tiny bit, and like I am miserable the next morning. So I think that one might just not be for me.
Might not be for me. Fair.
That's and it's only edibles because I can't do too much otherwise.
Gotcha.
Like if I have flour, I can't do too much flour.
Ah, okay.
But like I can accidentally consume too much in terms of edibles and then be miserable the next day.
That makes sense. So. What I need to do is get you high on flour then.
I mean, it's less likely to cause me to be violently ill the next day.
Perfect. All right. We're going to smoke a joint. Not now, but
eventually
on camera. Because, I mean, if Musk can do it, we can. Who's going to stop us?
I mean, honestly, we should both be able to get security clearance just based on his example because
I should be allowed in top secret meetings with NASA and the Pentagon because I smoked a blunt.
Yeah.
That should be the rule. All right, speaking of Musk, the chainsaw thing.
The chainsaw thing.
And the ketamine-fueled fucking interview.
Mr. I Am Become Meme.
Wow. That was... That was so unhinged.
I am very rarely genuinely uncomfortable watching someone I don't like crash out.
Right.
That was painful. Yeah. That was physically And oh God, it felt bad to watch.
It was so bad. Like, so fucking bad. Like, I just could not wrap my brain around it. I have become meme. I've got the big chainsaw.
They tried to ban comedy, but you're allowed to be funny now. You couldn't be funny.
They banned it.
You couldn't say the things. What things? Because here's the thing. Here's something I'm gonna say about what the things you can't say. If you want to say the N-word,
oh, you can.
You can, and I think that if you want to say it and you don't, you're a fucking coward.
Right? You're not going to be arrested for saying it.
No. Say it. Say it.
Just say the N-word if you want to.
Say it.
You're allowed to.
You are allowed to do that. And
now
you may or may not suffer social repercussions for that decision.
Yeah,
but it is your decision to make.
Like, that's the entire gist of this thing. Is like they act as if there's laws preventing them. Like, worst case scenario, there are laws preventing them from being assholes to their coworkers, right?
Yeah,
like that there could be a repercussion because the company doesn't want to get sued.
Yeah,
right?
You can't be a landlord.
Yeah,
and be like, I'm not renting to those people.
Right. Okay.
You can't do that.
Can't do that. Yeah.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah, you can't.
We'll see how long that lasts.
Can't work in a corporation and be like, I love to say the N-word while I'm working. Like,
no,
you can't do it. Like,
and even then, you're not going to be arrested.
No,
you're going to be fired.
Yeah, you'll be fired because your company will get sued by your fucking coworkers that are like, "What the fuck you call me?"
Yeah,
right.
And even if your company is not sued, your company will still fire you because they'll be like, "That's not a look we want. That makes us look bad."
Right. And what kind of coworker like would you really want to work with that asshole?
Yeah.
Well, he called me the F slur all day long. I'm so happy. No, nobody's happy with that.
Nobody's happy with that. No.
Like but these guys act as if they're so goddamn oppressed and put upon because like slurs aren't okay anymore. It's ridiculous.
And I don't know, these fucking elder Gen X motherfuckers.
Yeah. Oh God.
You know what? You know what it is? You know why they are the way they are? I think I figured it out.
Why?
So you remember all media when we were kids? It was all focused on Gen X,
right?
And it was always focused on like the weirdos and the outsiders and the people who were like bullied but were like the cool ones for real,
right?
It's all the people who weren't those kids that are fucking MAGA dipshits now because they're bitter that they weren't the cool ones then. They weren't the ones in Gen X that were having the movies made about them, talking about how cool and hip they were. They were the fucking dipshits who were just being assholes or were just being ignored entirely.
You're probably right. Yeah,
and it's just, you can learn so much about MAGA from looking at 90s media, late 80s and early 90s media.
Because they're not in it.
They're not in it.
Or
they're not the ones it was about.
Line.
Like they're
the bad guys, the bullies, like, the punchline, the girl that the cool kids don't like anymore because she was a cunt.
Was the Crow? I got a Crow poster on my wall. Was the Crow about those kids?
No. Like you don't even see those kids in that movie.
No. They didn't exist.
Yeah, like you watched a fucking high school movie from that time period, right? And like, it's the fucking burnouts and the metal kids and the skaters who are cool and fun, right? And the fucking rich girl and her friends are all fucking terrible.
Look at how
nobody fucking likes them and they're on screen for 10 minutes.
Look at how every fucking rock star in the grunge era played with gender roles.
Yeah.
Look at the fact that, like, the cool kids were the dudes who painted their nails and would, like, occasionally wear a fucking skirt to school.
Yep.
And just be like, fuck you, stop me.
Yeah, and they wore fucking flower print sometimes.
And it's all blowback from that because these fucking cowards couldn't make themselves do what they wanted to do when they were 14, and now they're making it everybody else's fucking problem.
You fucking preppy-ass nerds. That's
You're fucking weak.
Like,
you're fucking weak. This is the equivalent of making your broken dick everyone's problem.
Because you weren't out on the corner smoking Marlboros with me across the street from the high school, and you weren't getting laid all that often with random fucking girls in your school because, like, you were actually sticking with Betsy, the fucking cheerleader, whoever. You're miserable. You should have been over with me listening to Alice in Chains
And the
smoking
best part,
bar breads,
you want to know the best part?
and drinking beer instead of going to class.
I'm going to tell you motherfuckers something that's going to hurt your fucking feelings real bad. Not a goddamn one of us peaked in high school either.
No, I got better.
It only got better from that point on.
Right.
Every fucking year
Like,
it got better.
My high school years were like fucking, like some of the dumbest, shittiest times of my life.
Fucking least interesting period of my life.
Yeah.
Aside from the fact that like music
I was a loser
amazing
then, and I was
Yeah.
cool. Like that's
Yeah.
the thing is, I had a social circle where I was kind of cool in, right? And we, fucking partied, and did drugs, and had sex, and fucking did things, right? And I was still, compared to myself today, a fucking loser.
My friend group, my immediate friend group in high school was easily the weirdest kids in my fucking grade.
Yeah?
We were the closest things to true outcasts we had. Everybody loved us.
Yeah.
Everybody fucking loved us. We were beloved.
God.
What do you fucking people have to show? You're like Al Bundy talking about how you fucking threw 4 touchdowns in the fucking homecoming game.
These are the
your
motherfuckers who
senior
tell their
year.
kids that the high school is going to be the best years of their lives.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, kids. It never was. It never will be.
I remember-
high school, if it's the best years of your lives are going to suck.
I have
Like,
all,
and your parents, if they told you that, their lives suck.
I have all of my high school yearbooks somewhere in this apartment. And I can't remember her name. There was one girl, like, they have the senior quotes. Her senior quote was, if high school was the best time of your life, kill yourself.
Fucking
and we
beautiful.
published that.
I love that.
We fucking published that.
Like, look, you were weird.
I might
you
have
were-
been working yearbook staff the year that we published that.
That's awesome. Like, you were weird. You were smelly.
Yeah.
Like high school years. Like,
Yeah.
you're weird, awkward, smelly.
Your hormones are out of control.
Hormones are out of control.
You can't. Your skin is bad.
Skin's
your
bad.
hair is bad.
Voice got bad. Like, whatever. All sorts of shit. High school fucking sucks, right? Like, your body sucks.
It betrays you.
It betrays you. You want adult things, and you think of yourself like an adult, but society won't treat you like one.
Because you are still a fucking child.
Because you're still a fucking child, but you're in this weird headspace, right?
You know everything.
Right. And everything is lame.
Yeah.
Like, your whole experience. Like, it's fucking high school. You're trapped in a room fucking learning shit you don't want to learn for fucking 7 hours a day, right? Like, who the fuck wants to be there? If that's the best
Not me.
time of your life,
Yeah.
yeah, kill yourself. Like, you fucking peaked in high school? Oh, pathetic.
Yeah. Pathetic.
Pathetic. Like, look, I have gotten cooler since high school.
Yeah, no, same. Easy.
I mean,
Easily
and
cooler since high
Cool
school.
people don't need to say that they're cool, but
No. Other people say they're cool.
right. And
You don't get to decide you're cool. You know what? It's just like you don't get to decide you're cool the same way you don't get to decide you're an ally.
yeah.
People who are actually marginalized decide that you are an ally to them based on your fucking behavior.
Exactly.
You don't get to just announce it and be like, I'm an ally. No. That's not how that works. If you have to say it, it's probably wrong.
Yeah, the reason I say I'm cooler than I was in high school is because everybody I've run into that I did go to high school with
Yeah.
has a life that
I
they,
wouldn't.
they would not want, and they don't want their lives either. And they talk to me and they're like, "Well, you got out of town, you left, you did this, you did that, you did that. Yeah, you look good, yeah. Like, yeah, you like their fucking male pattern baldness and fucking like 40 pounds overweight and fucking like
They're miserable.
Like, I feel for you. I do.
Like
I went
probably
and lived.
Probably 2/3 of my graduating class still lives in my hometown, or immediately outside of my hometown, at least.
Yeah.
And I went back there and visited for an afternoon back in May of last year.
Okay.
It had not changed in the 20 years I was gone.
That's sad.
I looked up the population statistics. The population has almost doubled in 20 years, but it's still below 4,000. It's like 3,400.
So it'd be hard to notice change, except there's a new subdivision.
Yeah, there's
Right.
a lot more. There's a lot more like prefab housing.
Yeah, couple new strip malls and
Not even that.
Wait, something else to shop at?
I
Like
think
that wasn't there.
I think there might be one more traffic light. I think there might be a third traffic light.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I know people who I graduated with people who didn't leave. They still live there.
It's been a few years since I went back, but my hometown, like the city I grew up in, has like gentrified a bit because it was a fucking falling apart Rust Belt shithole when I lived there, right?
They'll do that.
And so, like, there's been this whole like revitalization, gentrification, like fucking tidy it up thing that's happened. But otherwise, like 85% of it looks the same, right?
Stays the same, doesn't
Stays the same.
change.
And it's like, and that's a city. Like, it's like, 80,000. So it's not a big city, but I mean, it's not.
Right.
It's not.
It's way bigger than where I grew up.
Right. And yeah, it's just, but it's blah. It's blah. Like, there's the people who live there are fucking, yeah, you get lots of fucking wannabe happy fucking factory folk who, like, live in their fucking, like, house with their 2 kids and shit.
And I'm going to say that there's
their lives
nothing,
seem fine,
there
but-
is nothing wrong with being genuinely happy with just having the 2.5 kids and a dog and a house and like a blue collar job you like that pays you a decent wage.
Nothing wrong with that at all.
It's the people who want more than that, who are too scared to do anything about it, that end up bitter and fucking miserable. Because those
Exactly.
people who, like, that's all they want and they get it, they are the most content motherfuckers on the face of the planet. They have everything they want and need. They are happy to have it. They are usually not assholes.
Right. Like, sad news is, like, for a while, I wanted more than that. But I convinced myself that that's what I wanted for a little while.
Okay.
Got married, bought a house, and all that bullshit. Fucking miserable. Right? And then I was like, now I'm done with this shit. And so I'm happy again. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, these people fucking, they don't leave their spaces and they get fucking miserable and they're just stuck in fucking high school and
they
nothing's been better since.
And they make it everyone else's problem.
It's pathetic. Ugh. All right. What we got? Is it the news?
Yeah, that's the news.
All right.
All right.
All right. I got a little fun history tidbit that came across my my feed here.
What's that?
In 1649, King Charles I was tried for treason and other high crimes. The monarch responded with the maxim, "The king can do no wrong, and therefore he cannot be tried or convicted." He was beheaded 10 days later.
I mean, whatever gets the job done. You know,
Just that thought. You can always behead a motherfucker.
It worked up to a point in France.
It did.
I mean, then they just started beheading each other, which don't maybe do that part.
You know,
Like, you got to learn where to stop.
Actually, the funny thing is really Napoleon fucked everything up from the end of the French Revolution. He rolled it all back. Like, that was
He did just make himself emperor.
yeah, fuck that guy.
You should never want an emperor or a king.
Never.
Monarchs are bad. This does remind me of one thing that I have seen. A take that I have seen from certain segments of the left of late
No.
is the idea that, like, if you are opposed to authoritarian governments, you're the real fascist. Tanky's going to tank. What can I say?
I hate them.
Just don't listen to them. Like, they
Stop.
don't matter. First of all, they're not interested in actually accomplishing anything, so you can just ignore them.
Yeah.
You can just be like, you're a fucking idiot, I'm not talking to you.
Like,
And then they'll just whine about theory they read but didn't quite understand, and eventually go away.
yeah, for the most part. Like, and I'm not saying ignore all Marxists and all even Marxist-Leninists. Like, some of them solid. I know a few who have doctorates, teach college.
Yeah.
Like, are really active in their communities, right? And doing community outreach and labor union organizing and all sorts of shit. But Tanky's going to tank. And
And this is especially true if you only see them online. Like,
yeah.
the ones who are interested in actually accomplishing something are out there starting organizations and doing actual work in their communities.
Yeah, they're doing shit.
They're doing shit. They're not just having fucking accounts on TikTok
Right.
where they farm rage,
Yeah.
argue with people who are actually interested in getting shit done.
Speaking of getting shit done, our topic today,
Yes.
it is the Western neoliberal order. And kind of like just a touch base on its pros and cons and why.
Of which there are both of many.
There are both of many, but which is why that if it is something you oppose, we should probably wind down slowly and methodically and not just throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Collapse is rarely beneficial.
Yeah. In the history of hegemonic empires.
It tends to just create power vacuums that are filled by the people most willing to use violence to fill the vacuum.
Exactly. And each time is different, but there are these patterns to collapses, right?
Yeah.
That kind of...
It's like no two fascisms are the same.
Exactly. But patterns there's that Mark Twain quote, history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme.
It's like Star Wars.
Yeah. But yeah, it's there is a theme that happens when hegemonic empires collapse, which you don't really want to be a part of. What we consider the Middle Ages, or they often called the Dark Ages, because Europe just collapsed into a series of fiefdoms and small monarchies and
petty squabbles that mostly just killed the peasantry.
Yep, and that shit went on for centuries, like a millennia, and it eventually culminated into the birth of the modern city, or the modern nation states that were run by these old monarchies during industrialization. So we get 2 world wars back to back.
Yeah,
that's what we get out of it. 1,000 years of bullshit followed by that.
Yeah,
right?
the 2 largest military conflagrations in human history were 20 years apart.
They were.
And one directly caused the next one.
Yep. And the thing about them is that they were this weird culmination domino from 1,000 years of fucking bullshit. Because
World War I was
collapsed.
so stupid.
It was very stupid.
And first of all, everybody was everyone's cousin.
Yeah.
There's that one wedding photo where it's every European leader in a picture together who were going to be fighting each other a decade later, and they're all cousins.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. But yeah, so that's the bullshit that we dealt with, and fucking science and math and fucking human rights all took a fucking slide from, the Romans. They took a slide from the Romans, right?
Who were not paragons of human rights.
Yeah.
Especially not in the imperial era.
The Mongol Empire that stretched across fucking China and into fucking, the Middle East. When that started collapsing, again, fucking more wars, more conflict, more death, more destruction, more fucking ethnic squabbles between states. Diseases, famine.
Oftentimes intentional.
Yeah, you don't want to be in the collapsing fucking empire. You don't. It's bad. And we don't know what it's going to look like this time. We're not really an empire, but we have some traits of one. But we are the giant hegemonic force with minor imperialist tendencies.
Right.
Right? But speaking of those imperialist tendencies, let's talk about the goods of them. Just like, the Romans built aqueducts and roads and shit, right? And basically connected the known world at the time.
Right.
Right?
And they probably would have done an even better job of it if they hadn't decided to use lead as a flavoring agent.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Don't do that. It's sweet and delicious, but don't eat the paint chips.
What is neoliberalism? What's global neoliberalism? Do you have an idea you want to give it to us?
We've got the general liberal order of the last 75, 80 years. But I've always thought of neoliberalism as in the 80s when you had Thatcher and Reagan and the privatization of everything as part of that global order.
Yeah, in a way. So it derives from that early liberal capitalist thought, right?
Right. Free markets. The freer the markets, the freer the people, all that nonsense.
Yes. And it's about letting, capital do its thing and letting the market do its thing and trying to leave it as light touch as possible from the direction of the state. But as we discussed earlier, you don't have an economy without the state.
No.
Right? You don't have any of this without fucking navies protecting shipping lanes. Right?
And doing things like building the Panama Canal.
Yeah.
The Suez Canal.
Transatlantic communication lines.
Yeah.
That had to be fucking...
Telegraph lines were not going to lay themselves across the Atlantic Ocean.
Yep, and now there's fiber optic.
Yeah,
right. There's fucking internet fucking switches that to connect fucking Asia to fucking
that occasionally sharks
California.
chew on.
Right, we have this global network of an internet that had to be laid by fucking large entities like the state, right, to do it,
and cooperation between states.
Yeah, which is one of those big things. What do? Trade deals, right? And that's trade deals, cooperations, pacts, treaties.
Mutually beneficial agreements.
Yep. And
we're like slightly more beneficial for us.
Sure.
We were always very good about getting very favorable deals.
I mean,
because of like our military strength post World War II
and our financial capacity post World War II. Like we were the only nation left standing with industry, right? Everybody else had gotten fucked.
It helps being 3,000 miles away on either direction from anybody who would attack you. When you can have the largest war in human history happen and have none of it take place in your country at all.
Yeah, I mean,
you're going to come out on top.
There was Pearl Harbor and a couple of attempted attacks on the Pacific coast.
Yeah,
but that's it. Like, there was nothing. Like, none of the actual war was fought on our soil.
Right.
And that's, I mean, we were left in a really good position from it. So we took the role of hegemon, right? And for all that, the faults of that, I think there's some big positives. But it's not just for us. Like, this is why I don't stand the U.S. as like this great fucking bastion of virtue or anything.
No country is.
No country is. But the thing about neoliberalism and capitalism in general, like, its flaws are obvious, right? Like, but some of its positives are that humans do things because of their own interest, right?
Right.
And rational self-interest, like, can lead to mutually beneficial arrangements.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it is rationally within your self-interest to work for me to make money, and it is in my rational self-interest to pay you money to work for me to make me money. Like, we both come out ahead. Yes, that's a rational self-interest that we both have. We both come out ahead. Same with, I want to buy one of these phones. Like, I pay money for it, and they give me the thing. Rational self-interest on both their parts. I have utility value, and they have fiduciary value, money. Right?
Yeah.
They have currency that they get, which they can utilize to get things that they find utility value in.
Mostly buying smaller companies.
Right. But that's what everything is kind of predicated on, right?
Right.
And there's a lot of exploitation in the system. Some of these deals are fucking awful. I'm sure we will talk about countries like Chad at some point. Ugh.
Yeah.
And, you know, companies like U.S. Fruit and what they did in Nicaragua.
Yeah,
and
this is often very bad for the global South.
Yes, it's often very bad for the global South.
But like, you look at Europe after the war.
Great for them.
Like us being the dominant military power has meant they have been able to focus far more on their own internal, like, social and civil infrastructure.
Yep. And
in a way that they wouldn't have been able to if they were constantly worrying about protecting themselves from their neighbors all the time.
Right. And the fact they're not fighting their neighbors all the time is a good thing.
Stability is good.
Yeah. And
like, it can lead to stagnation, which is a problem, but you can deal with that.
Right.
Instability only causes more instability.
And countries that trade with each other don't generally go to war. Like, if there's a lot of trade and there's a lot of, like, debt and fucking currency exchange between the two, why would you fight?
That's one of the reasons why I've never been, like, as worried as I see some people being about China.
Yeah.
Like, it would not be good for China for us to collapse economically.
At least not yet. Maybe in the future.
Maybe, but like I don't think they're counting on that.
No, but you know, they may want to.
Like, it would be bad for us if China collapsed economically.
Oh, it'd be awful.
And China is probably way more fragile economically than they are letting on.
Yeah, more than likely. I mean, Xi
Jinping. There's some signs.
Yeah, there's
some signs they don't like to talk about.
You know, that being said,
I've heard their housing market is on the verge of collapse.
Yeah, same. But neoliberalism, right? Like, the global trade order that we've created, right? You know, and a lot of this, you know, you could say a lot of it's industrialization, sure, but again, would we have industrialized without the rational self-interest to do so?
Right.
Right? It's a big question.
And also with a lot of these deals, like, you can always find a very big negative. And you can also always find a very big positive to any of them. Like, you can look at the way that, say, NAFTA fucked up the agricultural industry in Mexico, but then, like, everybody went to the cities and got better jobs.
Yep.
So they weren't working as subsistence farmers anymore. That was destroyed. But
Right. As Schumpeter, who I don't always agree with, and he was basically cribbing off some other Marx things, but as Schumpeter had said, he talked about creative destruction, right? And there's like this immediate, this is not a defense of what happens to the people that are left out of these programs, right?
Right.
Like these trade deals. It's bad for them. They get left out, it hurts them.
Right.
That is something that needs to be addressed more. But at the same time, if they move to the city and get better jobs,
right.
and they're not relying on their agrarian bullshit anymore, and they're living better standards of living afterwards, it's a net positive for most of them.
And
the ones who get left out, it's bad.
And even if you look
Don't get
at
me wrong.
people who stay agricultural workers who then say become migrant workers, that come to the United States and work on our agricultural industry, they tend to have a lot more money to send home than they would have had doing the same job there.
Oh, yeah.
Where they'd have just been subsiding.
For sure.
Because I remember I worked at a mail and parcel place and we did Western Union.
Their remittances are huge.
And I remember once a week, we would get all these migrant farm workers, and I don't know where they were working a lot of mushroom farms up where I grew up. We had a lot of mushroom houses, and they were just sending $800-900 a week back to family in Mexico. And
that's a lot of money.
And then when the season was over or whenever, they'd just go home.
Yeah,
and
have a pile of money at home.
They were probably in some ways being exploited.
Sure.
But they were probably being less exploited than they would have been otherwise at home.
That's a trade-off a lot of people, particularly in the left, don't think about. That if you're going to be working a really shitty job in a developing nation, right? And your standard of living there is garbage, and the pay is awful, and the safety and security you have is terrible, and the sanitation is bad, right? All of these things. Is it better to go be underpaid in the United States for 4 times what you were making, right?
Right.
At twice the standard of living?
Yeah, and the simple question becomes if it weren't worth it to them, why would they go through the risk of doing it?
Yeah, and it's huge risks to do it.
It's huge risks to do it.
So there's something to be said there. And
there's huge downsides if you get caught.
Yeah.
Especially now.
And the same with global trade. The Vietnamese economy is way better than it was 40 years ago.
Right.
By a lot. Because they've opened themselves up to trade, factories, etc. And now there's some stats out here that are fucking crazy.
Okay.
Right? And this is one of those things, it's when I think about neoliberal order, I think about the negatives a lot. You read books on the Dulles brothers and shit, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, right?
And you also realize that a lot of the negatives were unnecessary.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a big part of the problem. But when you look at, okay, what are the upsides? It's a pretty impressive list, right?
Yeah.
1820. What do you think the world's literacy rate was?
In 1820? 5%.
10.
Okay.
It's 10%. You were off by half. Double, right?
Still not very much.
You know what it is today?
85.
85 on the nose.
Oh, shit.
Yep.
I did
on
not
the
expect
nose,
that.
85.
That's good.
That is good.
That's good.
Fucking massive. 85% of the world's population can read now when 10% could read in 1820.
So in 200 years.
200 years.
That's not bad.
Right.
It's not bad.
Not bad at all.
I mean, look at the literacy rates in the Soviet Union post-revolution.
Yeah. It's fucking insane. From 5% to 90%.
Yeah.
Global extreme poverty, 1820. 80% of the world's population lived in extreme poverty. You know what it is today?
35.
10.
10. Oh.
10%.
Better than I thought.
Yeah. Safe water and sanitation. In 2000, 62% of the world's population had access to safe water. It's 74% today.
74%.
Right?
And there's still room for improvement.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you stop.
You don't stop.
There is no such thing as a perfect end state.
Exactly.
You are always improving. And you have to be. That's one of the things that drives me nuts about a movement like MAGA.
Uh-huh.
It doesn't understand that there's always room for improvement.
No,
and that things can always get better.
And it's mostly about trying to roll some shit back. Like
for it's like this. It's like the old Jello Biafra song. It's this nostalgia for an age that never existed.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a real world that they're pining for.
No.
It was an idea of a world that didn't actually exist.
And it's a hodgepodge of just different variations of that world, because they're throwing in fucking trad cat shit and fucking orthodox fucking church bullshit on top of it, and fucking Russian fucking literature in the mix with a little bit of like Roman fucking obsession.
So much of it is nostalgia for a world that, if it had existed, would have been before they were born. So they can't even have nostalgia for it.
Right.
They didn't experience it.
And there wouldn't be anything in that society
No.
either. Like, no. That's the fucking rub of it, too, is like in all the societies they pine for and all the concepts that they fucking dream of.
They're serfs.
Yeah, they're fucking serfs.
They're fucking peasantry without fucking indoor plumbing.
Yeah.
You're shitting in a bucket.
Like, life expectancies have doubled since 1800.
Look at child mortality rates.
Oh, yeah. From 50% dying by the age of 5 down to, like, 10?
Yeah.
Like,
Which is still too high.
still too high. But
we can work on it. There's always room for improvement.
But that is a huge, like, 4/5 decline in infant mortality. That's massive.
That's owes to vaccines. Vaccination has played a huge part in that. Like we were talking about measles earlier,
right?
Polio, fucking all sorts of things.
Yep.
Mumps. Fucking mumps used to kill people.
Right. Fuck.
I barely remember being told what mumps were like by my mother, who remembered them from her childhood in the 50s.
Yeah, we don't see or hear this shit at all anymore. It just doesn't exist. Like, and it's amazing that we've gotten here. And that's the most fucking aggravating thing about, like, the fucking Trump movement, right, and his fucking cronies, is how big of beneficiaries they are of this system. Like, Donald Trump doing business around the world with fucking oligarchs everywhere.
Yeah.
Right? Because neoliberalism allowed him to.
Right.
Right?
There wouldn't be oligarchs.
Yeah.
Without the global order of the last 80 years.
Like, USSR collapsing and them fucking stepping in to take over the void of all of fucking Russia's industry.
Yeah.
Like
15 guys.
Yeah. There would be none of them if not for this. You got fucking Musk again. He's such a beneficiary, right? Like, of the entire global
every
supply
single
chain.
step of the way.
Yep. The global supply chain is a necessity for his main company, Tesla.
Yeah.
Like, from rare earth
he
minerals
can't
to fucking chips to fucking steel. Like, none of that car can exist without some international trade.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with international trade. International trade is a good thing overall for the globe.
Yeah.
There are abuses that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
But there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. We're going to have global trade, so you got to make it as good as you can for as many people as you can.
Are you sure we can't put it back in the bottle? Because it looks like we're trying.
We're trying, but it's not going to work.
Fair.
We can isolate ourselves and economically collapse.
Yeah, that's just...
And then we're fucked, and then no one really benefits from that.
Yeah.
It's not like the rest of the world is suddenly better off if the United States completely falls apart.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay, well...
Yeah.
Sold me. I mean,
I'm pretty goddamn sure.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much to sell me on that.
If we could dial back our influence, but it should be controlled and strategic and planned and intentional.
Yeah, and in a way that, like, make sure there aren't massive power vacuums in those spaces.
Yeah, and in a way that opens up other, powers to take on that responsibility.
Right.
In a responsible way.
Yeah, 100%.
Without being able to just step in and strong arm their way in.
But that's easier, isn't it? The strong arming is easier, isn't it?
It is easier when you just want to let Russia do it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not that I don't believe Russia has the ability to do it. Like, we can create this vacuum.
Right.
They're not in good enough shape.
No, not Russia.
To just step in and do it. China could.
Yeah.
China could before they collapse.
Yeah. Right. That's they're teetering
There's a
little bit on the
window.
brink there. But yeah, we've seen this play out. We know what has built the system, and like it's things like NAFTA. And again, NAFTA, interesting story because everybody knows somebody who was hurt by NAFTA, but NAFTA helped so many more people that it's like, on balance, a great policy. Yes, those of you who lost your jobs because of NAFTA,
That sucks.
It sucks. I empathize you. We should have done more for you.
We should have done far more to find you jobs that were not going to be lost because of NAFTA.
Yeah.
I don't buy this idea that people can't be retrained.
Right. And I don't either.
You look at like in coal country where they rely on like the mines and
those coal mines are going out of business pretty rapidly.
all of those people are fully capable of being retrained to do energy work in renewables.
Yeah.
They are not dumb people. They are not incapable people. They have just been allowing their bodies to be abused for coal profits for generations because that was the only thing they had available to them where they were.
Yeah.
We can make other things available to them that don't require them to make that physical sacrifice.
That is not what their senators tell me.
Well, I wonder how much money their senators might get from those coal industries.
I think it's a lot.
I think it's a lot.
It is a lot. Yeah.
But, and I get if your family's been doing work like that for generations, not being able to see that you have an option beyond it.
Right.
And I also see if your family has been doing that kind of work for generations, having sort of a stubborn pride about it.
Yeah.
Where you don't want to let it go because your family's been doing it for generations, but it's killing you.
Yeah.
It's killing you.
And
you shouldn't want it to also kill your children next.
The shitty, there's the exploitive side of it over here, right? But there's the rational self-interest side over here. Those people, right? Getting retrained to do a better job that isn't killing them, right?
Right. That probably pays them more.
In a situation where there's global trade, right? Defers those shitty jobs to somebody else whose other job was shittier, right?
Right.
And their job gets deferred to somebody else's whose job was shittier, right? And that keeps cycling down that way through the global economy.
Right.
Right? Until you land on, there are people being exploited all the way along the chain, right? But they are in a steady chain of improvement in their lives, right?
Right.
Heading towards that, or at least their country's economy is.
Eventually you get to a point where, those really shitty jobs aren't necessary anymore.
Nope.
You can industrialize your way out of their necessity.
Yep, and you can automate the shit out of it.
You can technologically advance your way out of the necessity for human beings to do those jobs.
If only tech bros were worried about that and not controlling our minds.
Well, see, that's the thing. If they can't control our minds, they can't make us think they're cool. Yeah. Which is the single most important thing to the tech bro, that he be cool. He is not cool. He is always JP from Grandma's Boy.
Yeah.
That is every tech bro. That's all of them.
God, you're right.
That's all of them. That movie was prescient and doesn't get the credit it deserves. There's a reason it's the best Adam Sandler movie. It's because he wasn't in it.
Also true.
Best Happy Madison film.
Yeah, also true. You're not wrong. The rest of the crew did fine. They were funny.
Yeah, good movie. Stupid, but good.
Very stupid. But to the high end sky. Ooh, sorry. I was thinking of something and then I zoned out.
No, that's fine. You've had a night.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And an afternoon and a morning.
What was your last statement? What was your last sentence?
Oh, fuck if I can remember. Something about Grandma's Boy.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of Grandma's Boy, and I just kind of, zoned out on that movie, and, I was thinking of seeing there for some reason.
Good movie if you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it's aged. I haven't watched it in, 15 years.
It was on at the bar, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It's funny.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. Funniest movie. Did not have Adam Sandler in it.
And I do like some of his fucking shit ass
I know.
comedies. I laugh at The Water Boy.
Yeah, I
genuinely like The Wedding Singer.
Wedding Singer's fun. I miss his old musical comedy days.
Yeah.
Like, those were funny. Those were fun. I went to one of his shows at the Globe Theater, like, way back in the day. Before he got really big, you know, it was like when he was just this big, like, fucking musical comedian guy.
Doofy guy who made voices.
Yep. And, you know, sang about the fucking lunch lady and shit. It was great. God, those were days. But, you know, would we have an Adam Sandler without global trade?
No.
Probably not. No.
You can feel about that however you want, honestly.
Right?
Like, that could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Good thing, bad thing.
Been diminishing returns over the last 20 years.
You know, there was like this economic report from years ago, so add inflation and fucking other numbers and everything else, right? But like open borders would have made the world like something like $4 to $7 trillion a year richer.
I fully support open borders. Right. I believe migration at will is a human right.
Same.
I think you should be able to go wherever you want, whenever you want. Have customs checkpoints for certain contraband, or like you don't want invasive species being brought in. There's shit I get, like checkpoints, regional checkpoints. I understand that, but like human travel, I think it should be as unimpeded as logistically possible.
100%. Same. It's.
That was one of the big things I disagreed on Bernie with in 2016.
Same. Like
that was my biggest point of contention.
And his dumb immigration position then too.
Yeah.
Like,
he was too protectionist.
His views on trade and immigration, they were not healthy.
No.
They were not. Those were areas that I disagreed with him on strongly. And, you know, I think he would have done better if he had veered away from them, because I don't think they really helped him.
He also needed to learn to not just keep giving the same stump speech over and over again. Like, whenever he'd be asked a question, he would just, like, dive into, like, his prepared stump speech.
Right.
And after a certain point, you can only hear somebody say the same thing so many times before you stop listening, even if they are correct in the moment.
Yeah.
You just tune it out. People need novelty. That's one of the things Trump provides to voters is perpetual novelty. He is always going to say something you have never heard a politician say before in the way that he's going to say it.
Sadly, yes.
And people respond to that. It's dumb and it's not healthy, but it's kind of human nature.
Yep.
And we got to work with that. And I was actually, this is sort of an aside. I was on TikTok and I was scrolling the other day, and this one was talking about how, like, one of the problems that the left faces is that the left has no narrative. We do not provide any kind of narrative for what we want the world to look like. We're always arguing with each other, and we're always saying what's wrong. And at best, we're like, well, we could keep the status quo.
Yeah, or arguing about a couple of specific policies like universal health care.
But there's no grand narrative that the left provides to voters in the way that, like,
it doesn't paint a picture of the shining city on the hill.
MAGA has a story it's telling, that it's selling.
Yep.
We don't have that on the left. Because we haven't figured out what we want our narrative to be. We have a potential narrative. The things that you could say about how the world should look, and the world you want to move to, and the things you want to do for the American people, it's self-evident. Like, it's super easy. It's right fucking there.
I want a world where everyone can exist safely as who they're born to be and who they choose to be.
Yeah.
As long as that doesn't harm another person.
Yeah.
Right? I want economic prosperity for everyone, and for there to be a standard of living that no one, regardless of their capacity, circumstances, value to society, whatever, that no human being falls below.
Yeah,
right?
like, I don't care whether it is because it is being provided solely by the capitalist structure or by the state. I want everyone to be able to live their lives without worrying about food, shelter, basic necessities, the things that you need to survive.
Right.
I want everybody to be able to just never worry about those things.
Yeah, not at all. No worries about them, and that way everything else can be gravy. and
then like when you don't have to worry about that shit, you can focus on things like leisure and luxury in a way that you can't when you're just desperately clawing your way to survive.
100%. And that's the vision I see for the world. I want fucking trains connecting the cities and public transit and our cities to be smarter built.
I want a 300-mile-an-hour train that gets me to fucking Atlanta in 2 hours.
Right? Bigger, better, more fucking durable infrastructure that's built to last. I want shining cities on all of our hills.
I want things that when we look at them that we've created as human beings, we say, wow, that's fucking impressive.
Yeah.
I want to be impressed by human ingenuity again.
God, that would be nice. Speaking of human ingenuity and global trade, do you know how much global trade is? The value of it?
No. What's the value of all global trade?
$33 trillion.
That's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. Like the international trade between countries and states, right? Like shipping, receiving, imports, exports. $33 trillion. That is greater than the economy of the United States.
Yep, that is a big-ass number.
Right. And we get the biggest piece of that pie next to China and then Europe, right? Like, that's huge. Why in the hell are we trying to cut ourselves off from it? It makes no sense to me.
Unless you're part of a very small elite group of people who could potentially see benefit from the state falling apart.
Yeah.
And we do have a system right now that is, like I was talking about earlier, I can't remember if I said this when we were filming or if I was just talking to you before we started recording, but we are pushing towards a system where everything is designed to benefit a dozen ultra wealthy dudes.
Yeah. And
a dozen ultra wealthy white men get to benefit. Like this fucking budget plan.
Oh God. So bad.
Everybody's taxes go up, except for the ultra wealthy whose taxes go down. So they're cutting all services.
Yeah.
So it's they're literally just taxing our money to give it to billionaires.
Yep.
Like we don't get anything for it. We get nothing.
You get a military that keeps the billionaires fucking safe.
That we're also trying to like fuck up.
Yeah. None of it is sensible. And that is why
it's all deranged.
We do the grift.
That's what we're here for.
Yep. We endure the news so you don't have to.
I don't have any answers, but maybe we can all find them together. Yep. Maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe that's what we should focus on.
Right.
We gotta find answers to these questions.
And in the meantime, if you don't have answers to these questions, 1, listen to or watch our show. 2, go out, socialize, have fun.
Do things with your friends, man.
Disassociate from all of this garbage sometimes.
I think I'm gonna go see some local music tonight.
I am going to
at a brewery I don't like.
I am going to try to reach out to somebody and see if I can fold her like a lawn chair.
All right.
So, on that note, I'm Rev and Al.
I'm Gonzo.
This is The Grift.
We'll do this again next week. And in the meantime, what's the slogan for this show? What do we always say?
Give us all your money. Give it to us.